I bet this shot is plaguing a lot of people's golf. Hit a nice drive, we get the iron out, and then all of a sudden, didn't feel very good and didn't look very good either. And also, it didn't sound very good. And especially when you're on a driving range, you can get fooled into thinking that you're actually hitting it okay. But today, we're going to give you 3 things that is going to make sure that you're crushing your irons. These things that we're going to talk about, I've done these with my lessons over the last couple of weeks and found that they've really been helping. A couple of them, you're going to need a few aids, an alignment cane just to pinpoint where the body is, maybe an extra golf ball to use, but real simple things that can really help you get that strike. And number 1, what we've got to understand is where the club bottoms out. When we've got an iron, what we want to see is not that we're hitting the turf then the ball, we want to hit the ball then the turf. A lot of people are almost scared of taking a divot, think that it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, and it's not that you have to excavate a massive chunk of grass when you go out to play. We're only talking small little divots and even just sort of brushing the club. You might not even take a divot, but as long as the club, this part here, the leading edge and the sole of the club, is touching the ground and just brushing it after the golf ball. Imagine where my knuckles are was the golf ball. As long as I would get ball then the ground, we're going to see that we're getting those better strikes and getting the compression that we need. So the first thing to understand is, well, where should it bottom out? Well, it's level with the middle of my body here, and as I've just said, it's after the golf ball. So if I was here on the other camera angle, what we would want to see is that if my middle of my body is in front of the golf ball now, like so, my impact position would look a little bit more like this, and I would get the club below the middle of my body here and after where that golf ball would be, and then I would see that I've actually got my desired strike. The first thing that we're going to do to make sure that we're going to get that is all about the backswing. Now, as I take my setup, and we're going to use sort of irons here, obviously, of trying to get this ball and turf strike, we're going to talk sort of mid irons as we go through. I'm going to see that the middle of my body is pretty much on top of the golf ball here to maybe just slightly in front. And what I want to try and do is make sure that as I turn away, I resist the urge to go back away from the golf ball. So I don't feel that as I turn back now, as we could see, the middle of my body is well behind the line here. So that's going to make sure if I don't get back to where I was as I started and a little bit further, and I stay back here, my club bottoms out after the line here, or sorry, before the line, and I've not got that desired strike. Real easy drill that we can do. All it requires is an alignment cane and a basket. If you're down at the range, or if you're on the grass range, you can stick it in the ground. But all we're going to do is place it at the end of the mat like so, and have it just poking through here. I actually did this with one of my lessons the other day, but I had a TheraBand that was wrapped around his hips and I was stood behind him, and we talked about the resistance, resisting the urge to go back this way. I had him stretch with a band. Obviously you can't do this on yourself, so this is a different way. But what I've got to try and do is resist the urge as I go back to knock this cane as I'm going back here. So I've got to feel almost, imagining that someone was trying to pull me this way as I make my backswing. What I've got to try and do is feel that I almost fight them in the opposite direction. And what that'll do with my correct rotation, it'll mean that as I swing up now, just make sure that's not impeding you too much as you actually do it. If I feel the urge and the resistance to go away from the golf ball, if I fight that, I would see now from this angle that the middle of my body is still pretty much on top of this line. So as I go back, make sure I'm not getting pulled off and away from the golf ball here. I've got to resist that and feel like the middle of my body stays on top of the line. So number 1 thing that we can do, and even that, if you're just someone who's moving off it, that could be the cause of your bad strike. So let's just give this one a little clip. So I'm going to resist that urge to move off it. I'm going to feel like I'm twisting on top of the cane here. And even there, if we pick that up on the mic, that was absolutely crushed. That was more of what we wanted, just by that feeling of not going too much behind the golf ball as I go down it. Let's have a look at the simple tip number 2. Tip number 2, and don't do this with a full water bottle, do it with an empty water bottle. It's all about the imagination, this one. What I see a lot of people doing when they come to actually hit golf balls and they're striking it poorly, relates back to tip number 1, is that when they do go behind it, everything that they do in their downswing is pushing back down into the trail foot. So we get up and then we push back down here and we end up spinning back and end up finishing almost sometimes where the lead foot's actually up and all the weight's in the back foot, and that is not what we want. A little bit of an imagination. I don't want to squirt all my drink back out this way, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take my setup, find my normal distance, then I'm just going to hover the heel on this foot up. Again, like I say, empty bottles, don't have any liquid in it. I don't want to be having people message me saying that they've squirted the range or the mates behind them. We go up, we put our foot just hovering over, and what we've got to do in some practice swings is imagine that as we come into the downswing now, I'm not going to go down and squirt all the liquid that way. I'm actually going to come off the bottle, sorry. So then as I go through, I've not now squirted anything. I've left all the water in the bottle and I've moved off it. I've actually got my foot off here. So I'd be up, staying centered, move off it in this direction and let that rotation happen. And as we finish, we'll see I'm over this lead side. If I can do that, we should see that that again is leading to a nice crushed iron. So a couple practice swings, then pop it back under in here. And as I come back, I'm going to move off it in my downswing and not squirt anything back out that way. And there, really feel that I've got forwards and I've absolutely flushed that one. Probably the best one I've hit that, all by getting off that back foot and not seeing that I'm slamming down into it and squirting all the water behind. Let's take a look at tip number 3 to help you crush those irons. Tip 3 is all to do with angles, and that is the angle created between the club head, the shaft, and our hands. And we've probably heard the term early extension, and this is sometimes a common cause of that. Because when I want to hit a good iron where I get my ball and my turf, what I don't want to see is that the angle created is something like this, where the club head now is in front of my hands as opposed to the opposite here. And as we can see, there's a bit of an angle created in this trail wrist. What I've got to try and do when I'm going to hit these crisp, compressed shots is all about maintaining that angle down into impact, then releasing it after impact. What most people would do when they're hitting these bad shots is as they get up to the top, they've stayed on that center point, but then in the downswing they lose this angle very quickly, and as they come in then we see the club head out racing the hands, and ultimately it gets either buried into the ground or I stand up and early extend to make sure that I don't take a huge divot before the golf ball. Real simple drill that we can do to start off, bit of a 2-stage drill. Number 1, you want to take your grip and you're going to grip it halfway down the club like this. You turn it to the side there, so the butt of the club, the grip of the club is now pointing at the target. Place it in behind yourself and take your address as normal. As we can see here, serious angle created between the shaft on the floor and the shaft here. From there then, what I want to try and do is return back down to impact, feeling that 2 other things that I talked about earlier, but maintaining this angle. So as I come down, the grip here is always passing the shaft on the floor before the club head. If I don't, if I get this club head passing the grip, what's going to happen is as I come through, I end up hitting myself like this. So I'm throwing it early and I get this hit here. That is not what we want. We want to try and carry this angle and get it happening something like this. Then as I go into actually hitting some shots, I'm going to hit 3/4 shots and try and hit shots where I hold the angle into an exaggerated follow through. So I'm not looking for the perfect golf swings and the finished product here. I'm just learning and training myself to get this feeling. So I would have some, again, using this shaft in the middle of my body here as a guide to see that the handle passes before the head. But as I would hit I would hit somewhere I feel now as I finish, I've maintained the angle in that lead wrist. If I can do that in a few shots, so with a 7-iron hitting it like 100 yards maybe, or whatever a shorter shot would be for yourself, it would feel like very much like a punch shot. But what I can do there is make sure that I get that ball first, and then as I go to finish, I blend that into my full swing. I would feel I keep it, then release it. And what we should see, if we've got all the other 2 tips working for us, stay on top of it, get off that bottle, maintain the angle, is that we get a really nice crushed iron strike. So 3 simple things that you need to do. Run through those. It might be that you only need one of them, but if you're looking for better strikes, just play that video a few times, make sure you've got it in your mind, clear of what you've got to do, and we should see better iron strikes as we go through. Guys, hope you've enjoyed that video. Remember, hit the subscribe button down there below for me. Want you to get better at golf, you're going to do it by joining me for your free lessons every week. See you in your next lesson.